Are you finding yourself stuck in a negative thought loop? Do you wish that small, everyday stressors didn't affect you so much? Believe me when I tell you that I can relate. I've been there. And as someone who has been married or who was married for over 34 years and divorced after age 60, it took me 6.5 years along my own healing journey to get to the point where I am today. And so what I do in these videos is I show other women who are going through the trauma, complicated grief of gray divorce or divorcing after age 50, how to build up resilience, how to have the best life that you could ever imagine or want, and, have a life that you love. Even though you've gone through all of these horrific things, there is a way for you to live the life that you love. And so one of the things that I wanted to share with you today is I came across a video between Marie Forleo and Dr. Rick Hansen. And it was on Marie TV for any of you who want to view that. And I'll also leave a listing or a link below. But anyway, if you're somebody like me, I love science-backed information, neuroscience, and a lot of those are things that I used to help myself get out of that dark abyss right after my divorce happened, and some other things going on in life that really took me to one of the lowest points I've ever been, and I didn't know how to get out of that. But what I like about this video is the words that I have been sharing in these videos. Dr. Rick puts that in the language of understandable neuroscience, which is, a lot of what I'm saying, but he just says it and embraces it more with what happens in the brain and what the neuroscience or science of all of that means, and why you can have like 200 positive interactions in your relationship or your marriage or whatever, but one or two things just wipe all of that away, and that's what becomes that ruminating thought that will drive you, it seems like crazy. At least it did for me. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit today, and I want us to have a conversation. That's what I really want all of my videos with you all to be. I think of you as just, someone I'm having friendly conversations with. I'm trying to build a community of like-minded women, and I really am trying to help you get to that next level because, again, I was someone who's been where you are. So I say stuff from my heart. I say things that really helped me. I say things that I believe are really going to benefit and increase value in your life. So I would love to hear from all of you. I do read every single comment. And if you find value in watching the videos like this one that I'm doing for you today, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing this channel so that YouTube can push this out, this content, and show that to other women who can be helped and find value, and who can use the encouragement of knowing that they're not going through this dark, uncharted territory alone, that other people just like me and you out there are here to support them as well. And I also have a school community, but I'll talk a little bit about that, where I'm gathering women and providing resources and things a little bit later on in the video. Anyway, one of the things that, again, I like about the science-backed methods that are in this conversation is that it helps you grow an unshakable strength and calm and, find your way to happiness again, like I did. And there is no better way than looking at somebody who can explain it from, like me, a one-on-one human experiential situation, and then through someone like Dr. Rick Hansen, and also the insights that Marie Forleo is putting in as well. And what another thing that fascinated me about Dr. Hansen is that he said when he was a child, I'm talking maybe 7 years old or something, he had this innate sense that there was so much sadness and unhappiness in the world and in his own life, and he didn't know why. He didn't know how to get rid of it. He didn't know, why people were so stressed and, so trapped in their lives. And I believe it was Thoreau who said most people live their lives in a state of quiet desperation. I could be wrong, but that's the gist of it, that, there's so many people who are just dragging and almost like zombie kind of thing, just going, or mechanical. You're just going through day after day after day, and each day is the same. You're still unhappy, and it's just this unending cycle that he needed to break in his own life, and the insights that he had growing up, and why he does the work that he does today, and why he's been a senior fellow of the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley, and he's also been a huge New York Times bestselling author with books including Resilient, Hardwiring Happiness, The Buddha's Brain or Buddha's Brain, Just One Thing, and Mother Nature, all of which are available in over 26 languages. He's just very renowned, and if you just Google his name and NASA, TED Talks, Stanford, all of that, all the things, you'll see his work and the incredible information that he's sharing and learning. And again, he's also talking from his own lived experience of being a child trying to find his way out of that negativity. So, I was really happy to find that, to find this conversation. And I remember being a kid too when I was young and putting together all of these assignments where I was just, way ahead of where I should have been, and the way I looked at the world and the sadness. And I saw a lot of the same things. And being in my culture, it was probably, I won't say worse than his, but it was definitely a different experience. Being we weren't even middle class. We were very low income, happy at times, and the flaws show up as you grow up. But I was a happy kid for the most part. I looked at the world differently, and I had a lot of questions, and I talked a lot because I had a lot of questions, and a lot of people don't like that when you're in our culture, but that was who I was. So I resonated with that youngness, that young man who was trying to find his way in the world and to understand a world that didn't make sense at that age and time, and sometimes still doesn't as an adult. But let's see, where do I want to go from here? As I said, there was a lot of household stress, tension, unfulfilled longings, and things like that. And I think kind of for me too, that's what set me on my way to looking for better things and trying to understand the human mind and psychology so that I could understand how to survive my own life, and the limitations that were being forced on me, the inability to speak my piece or share my mind without being thought, that I was acting above my station, so to speak, and and having a lot of crushed dreams, like most of us, or some of us, unfortunately, do. But as I grew and learned more, I learned that you can help yourself. There are ways that you can increase your growth curve and your healing curve towards more resilience as you go through life. And, you have to have that belief that you really can improve. Sometimes it's hard and you have to borrow that belief from other people, but that is the core of what I teach, and that is one of the core principles that in Dr. Rick's books, you can find that as well. There are a lot of things that can trigger us in life, especially after we're coming out of a situation where we've been long-term married and that is no longer there. And we have to kind of be our own cheerleader, I call it, but in this conversation, they call it kind of being on your own side, being the person, being that friend, that deep, different level friend who's on the internal side of us, and hanging on to the quality and building more on the quality of that person who is like our rah-rah person on the inside. And many people actually have the stance of they're like their own worst enemy. They're not their own best friend. And, they're not against others, but they're not actually for themselves either. And you're kind of dead in the water if that's where you are and if that's how you look at life and how you think about things. And I know for me, one of the guiding factors for me, and I talk about it in some of my other videos, is that pinprick of light that I was able to save for 34 years just in case I ever needed it to restart my life, never knowing that that was going to be the only light that I saw in an ocean and a world of darkness that helped me rebuild. So I'm happy to see that put in scientific terms in this conversation. And as Marie Forleo says, everything is eventually figure outable, whether you know it or not at the time. So I think that that's a very key point, and that one thing, even though I couldn't really conceive of that thought in those words, when I realized that pinprick of light, I could at least turn towards that. And I could just take baby steps, or crawl actually, until I could, grab onto something and lift myself up and eventually be able to stand and not run necessarily, but certainly walk a lot faster and improve my life and put things that were tangible and sustainable in my life as well. So I think that that's what a lot of that means when you think about things being figure outable, and when you think about building resilience and things like that. And the good thing is that you also are able to acquire this kind of resilience, the sense of your own self-agency or efficacy, or feeling like you're not a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, or you're the nail instead of the hammer or something like that, and it's not just about positive thinking, even though I love positive thinking as well. And it's also not about denying the situations that you're in, how you're feeling inside. Instead, it's more about developing all the internal resources and the fortitude that you have in there, that help you deal with reality, whether that's a good reality, negative, positive, whatever, all the hard things, it's in there, and it's developing that. It's like a muscle, you have to just keep working on it and refining it and pouring into yourself until you're able to deal with reality that you're facing, whatever that reality is. So for me, it's like the form of being extremely hopeful that even though I didn't have everything figured out, I knew that if I just kept focusing on one thing, that little pinprick of light, one thing that brought me happiness, or took me away, helped me turn away from the ruminating thoughts, even if it was just for a minute, it still gave me peace of mind, and I felt stronger just because I was able to do that. So I think a large part of that also was knowing what it feels like to make that difficult choice, or to choose something different when you're going through that situation, even with the little things. And that's why some of the exercises that I share with you all have you practicing or journaling little steps, because those little steps can eventually build the mountain that becomes the inner strength that you have inside of you, that you need no matter what you're going through in life and where else your life takes you, good or bad. But you'll know that you have the strength. And if you want to put on the brakes on something in your life, that it's your choice. It's not something that you have no control over. And if you want to accelerate and go even faster, that is also your choice. It's not something that is left up to fate, or that happens because you are just, mentally and physically and emotionally a wreck. So again, I've been there, I can speak to that, and I think that in a way that becomes a superpower for me. Not that I know everything, but I definitely know the walk that I had to take, and the strength, fighting tooth and nail, to build a life that mattered, a life that was worth something, a life that I knew I deserved, a better life. I knew I deserved that, and so do you. Everybody deserves that. None of us deserve to be maligned and treated badly in or out of a relationship, but certainly over a long term. There's just, we don't deserve that. And I want to help you all get out of that situation and to get better. So I guess what I'm talking about, and what this conversation between Marie Forleo and Dr. Rick Hansen was really about is sometimes when you talk about psychological phenomenon and things like that, it becomes really stale, static, and very complex. And I like that they distinguished what's the difference between our minds and our brain. And it is a huge question. I agree with them. It really is. And, the great thing is that when you look at neuroscience and the psychological way of how it relates to that, the brain is basically considered like meat. It's like the core of a computer system, the hardware and all of that. It's physical, it's the stuff that just shores up everything. But the nervous system that we have, in comparison, it took like 600 million years, according to Dr. Hansen, to evolve. And so it has a function, but the function is to represent information. And so if that's the difference, the brain is like the meat, the mind is the information part that feeds into, this system of the brain. Excuse me. And it's kind of like, if you think about it, like, the environment around us and what we do every day. We see like maybe stop signs, or we see, blockages where road construction and things like that. All of that is kind of material in a sense, and that's something that we can relate to, right? But it's, when we're looking at it from the standpoint of energy and light and other things that they describe as like part of our material reality, but not just looking at that, looking at the meanings of what those things are. Like, what is the meaning of blue? Or what is the meaning of green? Or, other things that are sort of intangible that we know, but we can't really describe it without, in terms of like a physical sense. That's kind of where matter that exists, and also information that exists, and that's that intangibility again. So the information that flows through the nervous system, Dr. Rick describes it as the motor systems are tracking your sensory systems. For instance, it smells good. Swim towards it. Ew, that really tastes nasty. Get away from that. This is the basis of how we form our experiences. And like right now, we're learning, we're hearing, we're seeing people in our daily lives, we're listening, we're seeing and we're thinking, and all of those experiences are really made from information in effect. And so they are immaterial. They exist, but we can't really put our hands on it, you know what I mean? And so the takeaway is that in time, you can learn to use those experiences. You can learn to use your mind, the flow of how your thoughts are going, where you put your attention, what you do with your feelings. You can use that because it kind of uses and enlists that underlying neural process that I couldn't really describe in what I was saying, but it's like the, the basis of where they exist. Something exists but is not tangible. And the takeaway, again, is that you can use that experience, you can use your mind and the flow of how thoughts are, and you can put your attention, what you do with your feelings, what you can do with all of that, because it helps you use those things as like a positive reinforcement in your mind to represent your the actual changes that you want to see in your brain. Because when you repeat patterns of neural activity, there's like traces that are left behind, right? And it's kind of like the analogy that they used in the conversation, like water on a hillside, and water constantly coming down over a hillside over time, it kind of erodes what's there, the substance that's there, or the physical thing that's there. And so fundamentally, that means that we all have the power inside of us every single day, every single second, every single minute, to use our minds to change our brain and to change our brains and our mind for the better. And that's kind of, I'm here for all of it. I'm here for all of it. And it is exciting, by stuff that you can, the realization that you don't have to be stuck where you are. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I try to get out to all of you, that even though you're in a situation, and like I said, I've been there, I've been there, and depending on the length of time that you're married, not that it matters, because the thing is the thing, and pain is pain, trauma is trauma, and it doesn't matter how long you were in it, it still hurts, it definitely hurts, and we can all agree with that, right? But knowing that you don't have to live that way, and your brain doesn't have to be stuck like that, and that the things that you're going through are scientifically sound. You're not crazy. And for a long while, I thought I was losing my absolute friggin' mind. I really did. And I know my adult kids will testify to that. And sometimes they still think I'm losing my friggin' mind. But that, to survive something like that, that's tough. This situation is really, really tough. And I don't think I know people don't really understand the impact and the trauma and just the devastation, the level of devastation that happens over that sustained period of time when a situation as sacred as a marriage is rocked by betrayal, and it goes away, and there's trauma and all this other stuff. It is just unimaginable to anyone who has not gone through it. So again, the thing that I really like about this conversation is that it is exciting, because it's really like a scientific affirmation of the way that you feel, and the transformation that I work diligently to help you all experience, is that no matter what situations you were born in life, no matter what happened to you in life, there's something intuitive that we can gain strength from, and it's that all of these certain circumstances, the pain, the trauma, no matter what it was in our past, that does not have to remain our forever destiny as we go forward. And so it's kind of like a learning mindset, we're not stuck forever in that negative space. The truth of our past is going to be the truth, right? We can't change that, but we can grow, and we can learn, and we can move on from that, and we can shore up more and more and more of that resilience inside ourselves. It's just a matter of knowing how to do that. And we all know there are big problems in the world, and that all of us are going to, as long as we're here, we're going to have something that stresses us out. It can be an illness, it can be like a difficult relationship with a family member, and of course there's disappointments and all of that stuff that goes into just living, right? But there's also a realization that our inner self, the strength that we can grow, even though the world is and will be chaotic, and it can also let us down terribly hard, but we can always count on the growing strength that we're working on within ourselves. And so it's not just about positive psychology, even though I love that. There's more than just self-help. And a lot of people, I think, when they think about self-help and positivity, it's like, you're just going to zen into this magical space where everything just mellows out and it just calms. And the more you meditate and the more you stay positive and all of that, it's just going to make it like, this magical thing, and it's just going to all evolve and, disappear, right? But even though all of that is good, and even though gratitude and practicing gratitude does help you, all of that is good, but we still live in the real world, right? And so what about all those difficulties that just don't give a frig about positive thought or how much we meditate? And those really, really hard things, they don't care about positivity. They don't care about positive reinforcement. They don't care about any of that. It's basically just, I hurt, I'm in pain, and how do I survive this? I think I'm going to die. I don't know how to survive this thing. And so that's where resilience, like I said, and like I always say, comes in. You really need to start building that inner strength, because that's where change really comes from. That's how you really impact your brain and the neuroscience of everything. It's got to be at that inner, deeper level. And it comes from, resilience comes from like capabilities, the know-how, the determination, all your positive emotions, everything. It's kind of like, you have a box and you're just stuffing all of that good stuff in there, because you need that. You need that inside. You already have it, whether you know it or not. It just might need to be refined and built up because you've, perhaps neglected it, or weren't even aware that, you have this inner supply of strength within you. So, it's just something like, it's a tool. And I think about a lot of the different things, and I talk about them like that in my conversations, that all of these are just tools for your backpack. It's like if you were going on a nature track or a hike or whatever like that, you have certain supplies. Even if you're going over the road for a vacation or a trip or whatever, there's certain things that you make sure you have to have in there. It's like if you're going into thunderstorms or snowstorms or wind, whatever, you make sure you have everything that you need. You need a flashlight. You need like enough warm clothing. You need food, water, things like that. You need charged batteries. You need stuff for your survival. And so each of these tools that I'm sharing with you, and that I want you to learn through more and more of the neuroscience, is that these are proven things that helped not only me, but they can help you as well. And so the more of them that you can layer on top of each other becomes your experience that's dependent on that neuroplasticity or remembering, and the idea is that through the focused attention and sustained experiences of something that really helps you and benefits you, you can actually start to hardwire certain things into your nervous system. And so the more you feel like it's with you wherever you go, even if you're stranded out in a desert or whatever, those emotional, psychological, neurological tools are still there. Desert's not really a good example, but you get what I mean. You have those tools ready. They're just like ready. You can call on them any single time you need them. They're there to actually help you. And so, the more you feel like that, the more or the less you feel like you're running on fumes. And there's so many of us out here running on fumes. And as somebody who was on, I felt like I was on my last one, my very, very last ones before I was just tapped out and running on empty. A lot of people just don't know that, or they don't have it inside of them, to actually build up the good stuff inside. And so the key to doing that is that you look for experiences. The more that you go and the further you get away from this traumatic stress and gray divorce and all of that, you start to look for more experiences that have proven helpful for you, that are real, that, don't make you want to run off to the other thing. Like you get a thought over here and it's like, oh yeah, that's good. And then you're over here totally doing something different. You need to stop. And I tell you this a lot in the exercises that I've created. And that's kind of why I created them, because I've been where you are. And I know that the stuff that I needed wasn't out there, but it is so important to breathe. To just breathe. Take 1 or 2 calming breaths. And the longer you do this, if you need it, you need to feel that inside your body, actually recharging your body, and allow yourself to sit in it for a while. That's something that was really hard for me to do, to sit in my grief, to sit in my trauma, and not get so lost in it. Because that was also one of my fears, that if I gave in and if I looked at that, it would just hug me and stifle me to the point that I couldn't get out of it, and I didn't know how to deal with that. So that's why I think that's one of the reasons that I know it took me so long to heal, because I had 34 years of stuff to look at and look back on, the good and the bad. But as they said in neuroscience, your brain will hold on to the negative things, even though it was not nearly as long as the 34 years and the happiness that was in there. All of that, became painful to me. Even the happy times became painful because it just heightened the sense of loss and despair, and the feeling that of what you poured, all this love and emotion and energy that you poured into someone and something, and it just made the hurt more. It made the trauma more traumatic, if that makes sense. So anyway, focusing on what is more rewarding about the experience that you're having, that you're looking for in life, and those next things that you're going on, rather than just abandoning it because it seems scary. That's what actually is the hard work that hardwires your brain and the neural processes, and it helps them to kind of get stuck in there like an experience that just stays in there, like almost like you're recording that experience or downloading that experience into your nervous system. And so the more you have with you when you're on this healing journey, the better off you'll be, and eventually you will see that, yeah, you can do this. It's just really, like I said, crawling, struggling to sit up, first of all, and then struggling to get out of bed or off the couch or, on the floor so that you can at least crawl. And then from there, just like a baby, you go through those steps of pulling up and then falling, then pulling up and then falling before you actually are able to walk. And when you're rebuilding yourself from the inside out, I liken it a lot to that, because that for me, that's what it felt like. But you can tell me in the comments what it felt like for you, or what it feels like for you if you're still going through that. And hopefully you can hear just by my words that I am not fluff. I am truly 200% authentic. And, when I tell you I know this journey from the bottom, the lowest of the lows, to, just trying to find a way to get out of it, and being on the other side of it after that 6.5 years of living experiences after that, and realizing that, yeah, there is another world on the other side of that, and that, on the other side of all that desolation and darkness and fear and chaos and hurricanes and tornadoes and all that stuff in the back of you, that if you can just get to the other side of that, even if it's just putting one toe on the other side of that, that it is so, so much better, and is so incredible, and is so possible for all of us. So a point that I really find to be extremely true and valuable in that conversation was also that negativity can blindside you. And that's because, again, the brain is wired to, because we have that fight or flight thing going on as well, that the brain locks more onto the negative stuff than it does the positive, and because it's just wired that way for some reason. Excuse me. So you need to grow the good that is inside yourself to counteract that. I think I said for whatever reason, but the reason is negativity bias. It's like we're not taught any of this stuff in school, to be honest. And negativity bias, I'll put like a slide up here to explain more about what that is. But it's just the brain's tendency to ruminate on things that are negative over all the good that we've had in our lives or in our experiences, And so it's important that we learn to savor all of the good stuff, and that we make time to imprint that experience in our bodies with, so that we can internalize it and sharpen our defenses against that negativity bias that's just inherently in our brains. And in the conversation, it's kind of funny because they said it's like the brain's negativity bias is kind of like having Teflon or Velcro, and all the good, it's like having Velcro, all the bad experiences stick to us, and then it's like Teflon for the good ones, And every day we have examples, hundreds and hundreds of examples of things that happen in a relationship just in a day. And, even, with our family and our friends, 10 of them may be good. But the 11th one, that's the one that irritates us. And it just is like a thorn in that lion's paw. That's the one that you become obsessive about. And, that's just the way that's just the way it happens. It's like people who are afraid of like even getting on YouTube because they're afraid of getting criticism, or you can have a beautiful day, beautiful responses from something that you've done really, really well and you're really proud of, but that one little comment just becomes like a razor point. It just irritates you more than like 100 times worse than all the other stuff that you've gone through. So it's a lot of this is about learning to insulate ourselves from ourselves and from the way that we internalize things and experience things. And that's again, I liken the brain to like a muscle. It's something that the more you learn how to build your inner strength and your inner resilience, it becomes a barrier to just that negativity and that cycle of negativity that just keeps whirling around inside of us. And it's hardwired inside of there, so it definitely takes work to get out of that. So I'm going to read this statement here. It's like, let's see here. You can watch your own mind. It's really interesting when you watch your own mind. Routinely, your mind does these 5 things. The brain's designed to do them. It's designed to look for bad news, to overfocus on that bad news, and the bad news also inside your body and in your mind. It focuses on it. It overreacts to it. And it's like that one little light that won't go out on your computer that's just irritating, and it just keeps flashing and flashing and flashing, and it fast tracks it into your memory. And so once it's burned, twice shy, never forget. For example, it continues. There's research that shows that one negative interaction in a relationship has much more impact than several positive interactions. That was a takeaway for Dr. Rick, he says, when he was in grad school and he saw it and he thought, wow, what has he been putting his own wife through all these years? Because, we have to kind of tip the scales, The other thing that the brain does, he continues, is that through cortisol, the stress hormone becomes sensitized to the negative. We become extra prickly, extra irritable, extra anxious, which then creates more negative experiences the very next day. It's by design, but what we can do is feel the negative. Feel it, let it flow, and then what are you going to do about it, right? Think about, how can I grow the good inside myself for my own sake? and other people every day forward, going forward. Learn to love it. And he says another metaphor that I thought was kind of interesting too is loving the zoo in your head, really honing the lizard, referring to the reptilian brain, the mouse and the monkey. And as a student of brain science, Dr. Rick says that he feels like this is a wonderful way to help us all remember this zoo in our mind. Our brains think, a lot of us actually have this feeling that what's inside is sort of like a zoo. There's all these different voices, and they're all tugging and going in different directions, right? And that's partly because the 3 evolutionary stages that we have inside our brain, that are building, it's like he calls it building a house from the bottom up in 3 floors. So we have more or less like the reptilian brainstem, which is very focused on safety. And then on top of that, we have the mammalian subcortex with strange parts of the brain, like the amygdala or the hippocampus, that's very focused on satisfaction. And then we have the primate human neocortex that sits on top of all of that, and that's very focused on relationships and on our need for connection. So basically, each of us has inside of us kind of like an inner lizard, a mouse, and a monkey. And the amygdala is not part of the reptilian brain. It's actually on the second level. So it's part of the subcortex that sits on top of the ancient nerve, the brainstem. And it's oriented around fear and alarm, that fight or flight response that I talk about. So it helps definitely to keep us safe or to make us feel safe. But the amygdala, God, that's such a hard word for me to say. Amygdala also lights up when there's opportunity around us. There's actually been research that is called the joyful amygdala. And it's very exciting. And what research shows us is that you can train your amygdala to actually shift out of those grumpy states. You can train it and move more into the joyful states. Yeah, you're going to still see the threats. You are still going to see, angry faces and irritations and all of that. But at the same time, you're also going to be able to see that and recognize that there's so many other opportunities around you and in your life, and that a typical life is so full of them. And so that's the brain, in a wide view, that's the brain. And so the takeaway that you can get from all of that is that these structures are already inside of us. They're real. And we can't get around that no matter how we try. We have needs. We have, we want to feel satisfaction, and we definitely want to feel safe, and we want to connect. And so when all of that's disrupted, all of these things kind of play into what we're going through. And one of the ways that we can help to start to grow away from that fight or flight mentality is to start to look for authentic opportunities every day that let us feel even a little bit of safety, enough of it to at least get through that situation where we are right now. We won't, maybe feel totally safe 100%, but we can feel certainly a lot more safe in that one space where we are. And I like that in the conversation, Rick Hansen says that we're all basically scared little critters, and we all need enoughness of satisfaction, of fullness, and a sense of contentment and gratitude. And it would be good, to not have all those irritations in our lives and everything like that, but we can still feel a sense of connection and some safety, no matter what we're going through. And it's kind of like petting all the critters in the zoo, looking for satisfaction. And, we can find the beauty in flowers or nature or in our children's faces and, in a good movie or something like that. So just those little wins, little connections. And, that's a start. So anyway, let's see what I want to leave with you all to wrap this up. That those little things that you look for that make you feel safe, They become signals, and they help you feel secure. And love definitely does become the universal healer or medicine for all of us, and that definitely includes self-love. It's like the ultra super packed multivitamins. And taking those experiences and learning how to build up your inner strength, giving yourself the freedom and the space and the permission to not be 100% okay, but to know that today, when you focus on even doing one thing that brings you a degree of safety, that takes you even a fraction of away from where you are feeling, or where you were feeling like 2 days ago, it's a win. It's a win. So I think I'm going to stop there for today, but I was so excited to find a video that kind of put more into words in a scientific format of the way that I was kind of feeling, some of the things that I was doing without even knowing that I was doing them to reprogram my brain, but still searching and hungry for something that would do that. But that broke down a lot of what I was trying to say to all of you guys, and what is the basis of me being in this space, so that I can turn my lived experiences and the mental changes that I had to make in my own life to transform my life and to see better, to get up out of this dark abyss where I was just in this fetal position and everything around me hurt. It was like the world was on fire all around me. Even in my little enclosed state, I was on fire. And so yeah, I encourage all of you to stick with it, to find inspiration in this video. Again, like, share, and help you to push this out to more women who are out there struggling alone. If you're going through this, if you're somebody who's experienced this, you know how painful it is and how isolating and how lonely it is, and how you desperately crave someone who can understand what you're going through and who doesn't say, just get over it. That's in the past. Leave it. Don't focus on that. I hear you. I was you, and in a lot of ways I still am you. But I'm putting links to, as I said, there's a school community where I'm gathering other women who are supportive, who are growth-minded, who are on the same journey, who've been on the same journey, and who get it, who really get what this is all about. And some are on different, levels. We're all on different journeys, but there's a ton of resources. I'm in there every day checking, and you can ask me questions. I have workshops and onboarding sessions. So I'm in there. I want to help you get to the best version of you that you see for yourself, and it is possible. So anyway, take a look at the links that I have. There's links to my websites, all of the things, my IG, and I also, in the bottom of my links, I will, or in my links in the description, I have different things that I think would help you. There's a link that will take you to a lot of different resources. Some are free, some have a small charge, but they are all vetted, created by me, or recommended by me after I have either used them in my own journey. And, I know I don't share things that I don't believe in. So take comfort from that I have either used what I'm sharing with you. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to tell you about it. Okay? If it didn't help me, you'll never hear about it. Unless it's something that I think is getting a lot more traction than it deserves. And I know that it really doesn't work. Now, I might share a video about that, but mostly I stay on the positive line and the positive side of health and healing, and sharing stuff that will get you faster where you want to go. All right? Take care. Be good to yourself. Be blessed. Don't be too hard on yourselves. Look at all the things, and definitely leave me comments on where you're struggling. Where are you at in your journey? And how can I be of service to you? How can I use what I've learned and what I've gone through and the growth, and how can I save you time and energy and internal stress and build fortitude for you instead. All right. Love you guys. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for staying this long and watching. I hope you got tremendous value out of this. And I will see you in the next video, okay?